Welcome to Ripplemoto. This is my classic 350 and I'm going to be telling you 5 things that I love and 5 things that I absolutely hate about this motorcycle. Make sure to stay tuned because the last hate might surprise you. Looks. Spoked wheels. What more can I say? They're just absolutely divine. They really give this bike the retro styling and look. And I just love them, absolutely in love with them. If I'm ever going to look for a retro motorcycle, it's going to be very hard to not get one with spoked wheels. I think you'd be lying to yourself if you said that this bike is ugly. If you said this bike doesn't appeal, it doesn't inspire, it doesn't look drop dead gorgeous. Now I know it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's really hard to ignore the looks of this bike. The beautiful chrome finish, the retro styling, the post-war looks. This bike is simply gorgeous. Simple, air-cooled engine, no radiator. Just admire that bike. The second thing that I absolutely love about this bike is how comfy it is. A lovely 90-degree bend in my leg. Mid pegs, but they're quite forward. I have a nice reach to the handlebars. I'm not too tall, so I don't feel too cramped on the bike. This bike is great. The Royalenfield touring seat in black it just adds to the bike. It gives it this kind of bobber aesthetic almost, and it's got this lovely pin stitching. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it is the comfiest seat that I've ever sat on a motorcycle. Coming up to the bike, you can see the third thing I absolutely love about this bike. Have you guessed it yet? That's right, ABS. This bike has ABS in the front and rear. What more could you want? On a dark and drizzly day like it is today, and during a storm, I want to have the safety in knowing that the bike will stop in the event of an emergency. Coming in at number 4, we've got Affordability. You can just pick these bikes up for so cheap. I mean, look at this. Just over 8.5 brand new, and even under 8 grand for the other classic 350 models. Royalenfield have done an amazing thing, combining reliability, looks, charm, and affordability. This is a huge amount of bike for the money, especially when you look in the used market. These things sell like hotcakes, and that means heaps of people have them and heaps of people are getting rid of them. So you can pick up some really sweet deals on these bikes. You could have a brand new Royalenfield for around $40 a week with no deposit. Come on, that is ridiculously good value. Fifth thing that I absolutely love about this motorcycle. When you come to a stop on this bike, you can just feel thud, 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 thud. You can feel the bike thumping away. You can feel the heart of the bike underneath you. And honestly, it's special. And I've never ridden a motorcycle that gives me such character and such feedback. Because of this engine, you don't need a speed tacho. It tells you how it wants to be ridden. It tells you how it's feeling. And there's something just special about a connection that you get with a bike like this. Now, a lot of these things that I hate about the Classic 350, I've actually grown to love. So this is just a little disclaimer that they're definitely in no way deal breakers. They're simply just things that I wish I had. Quality of life, ease of use, ease of maintenance, stuff like that. So let's get into it. I mean, it probably comes to no surprise, but maintenance intervals. I mean, coming from a long line of Japanese bikes, I was quite shocked, honestly, at how frequent the valve checks need to be performed on this motorcycle. The engine's reliable, yes, but the amount of maintenance that comes with that, if I had known this before purchasing the bike, it probably would have changed my opinion on the bike, but I'm glad that I didn't because everything else makes up for it, you know? But it is seriously something to consider. It doesn't take away from the bike, but you might want to learn your own DIY trade when it comes to this bike, because you could rack up quite the pretty penny in service fees with just a couple months ownership. The transmission comes in at number 2 on the list of top hates about this motorcycle. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's great. I've grown to love the transmission of this bike, but when you first get on it, you definitely notice it compared to some bikes. It definitely has a good feel to the transmission, don't get me wrong, but you have to make sure that you're very deliberate and firm and accurate with your shifts. So mainly, you know, comes down to rider error. But I've gotten probably the most amount of false neutrals while going through the gears on this bike than I've gotten on any other bike that I've owned. So it's definitely something to consider if that's going to really piss you off. I mean, it's mainly user error on my behalf, getting used to the bike, but it definitely makes for some weird situations when you're trying to go into second, or you know, you're trying to upshift and then all of a sudden you've got no power to go. And we'll get into the power on this bike a little bit later in the video, but it's just something to consider for sure when looking into this bike. Alright, coming in at number 3, we've got the engine. Now, I know I said I absolutely love this engine, and that's why it's one of my big likes about this bike, but you know, it has some pitfalls, and I wouldn't be honest if I said that it didn't. I do wish that it had a little bit more power, you know. If it had an extra 8 to 10 horsepower, this bike would be perfect, it would be immaculate. You know, it does feel like it's stretching its legs at that 100 kilometers an hour, 110 kilometers an hour mark, which you do have to sit on the freeway. It does it fine, but I wish it just had that little extra pep in its step to get me there comfortably. I didn't feel like it was straining the bike too much, you know, and you don't feel that it is straining the bike too much, but you definitely notice it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, if it had just a little bit more horsepower, it would be perfect. I mean, it's just slightly too little to be the ultimate unicorn motorcycle. If they say it had 25% more power, oh, what a dream. Alrighty, coming in at number 4, no 6th gear. Alright, I have a bit of a personal pet peeve when it comes to motorcycles. I believe that they should all have a 6th gear, guys. It really does my head in when a bike doesn't have 6 gears. I'm always looking like an idiot, an absolute idiot, reaching for that 6th gear that doesn't exist. It's not a massive problem on this bike, but it really would give it a sense of ease in the higher RPMs when you're on this bike at the higher speeds. If you're cruising at 80 and onwards, 80 kilometers an hour and onward, the bike does feel like you can hear the motor stressing a little bit. A 6th gear, maybe that would eliminate some of the stress, right? Maybe that needs to be paired with a little extra power, all right? Just a pinch of power plus a 6th gear, and you've got yourself a unicorn, a perfect bike. And because of that, I absolutely hate it. Nah, it is bloody miserable because of that. It definitely takes from the bike, you know. Arguably, yes, it doesn't need a 6th gear, but you know, it's creature comforts at the end of the day, and I dislike it because of that. I think a 6th gear is just nice to have. Keeping on the topic of gears, we're talking about no gear indicator. If you come up to the dash, it's great. I love the dash, and I love how simple it is, and I think it thrives off simplicity. It doesn't have a gear indicator. You know, it's not a make or break for this bike. It is definitely not a break. It would be nice to see one. You could very easily slit a tiny little number just to show your indicator. Now that I've been living with this machine and riding it every day, it is not a problem. I don't need an indicator, gear indicator. But it would have been nice when I first swung a leg over this bike, took it out on a test ride. When I first ride it, if you're a newer rider, you're inexperienced, a gear indicator is going to be great. You're going to stop reaching for gears that aren't there, or you might stamp it into first instead of second when you're still getting used to the bike. And it just helps the learning curve a little better if you can have that mind and peace in knowing what gear you're in. But again, it's definitely not a breaker, and it definitely presents the bike as more of a challenging ride, and there's actually a secret joy in that. But I'm trying to hate the bike, guys. I'm trying to hate it, so we're hating on it for that. Boo. Alrighty guys, the final thing that I hate about this motorcycle, I know there's been a lot of anticipation for it, and can I get a drum roll? The final thing that I despise about this bike is how gorgeous it is. Do you know what a pain this thing is to keep clean? I mean, I'm sure if you're an owner, you know, but if you're thinking about getting this bike, just you wait. I mean, look at it. Mine, maybe the camera is doing it justice right now, but we've just had the first big lot of rain where I am in Australia, and I was out riding yesterday trying to capture the footage to film this video, and let's just say I got rained on, and this thing is just, it gets dirty so quickly. I mean, we've got this beautiful chrome everywhere, and it gets absolutely destroyed. It gets ruined. I mean, you probably can't see it too badly on my bike right now, but I mean, just all these little imperfections from where the water's dried. You know, I have to make sure that I clean that up, get in there, clean it. As you can see, the center stand's caked. It's just one of those things, you know, it's just, there's a lot that you have to do, not just in maintenance, but in visual maintenance, maintaining the gorgeous aesthetic of this bike. If you live somewhere where it's really bad weather constantly, I could see this being an absolute burden. Absolute burden. And that's why it comes in at my top thing that I absolutely hate about this bike. I guess it's a love-hate, you know, because at the end of the day, it makes it worth it. But knowing that when I come in for a ride, I'm going to have to let it cool down and then go and clean it and rinse it off before I can put it away, you know, it adds to it. It adds to the daily struggle, but boy, it is worth it for these bikes, guys. Alrighty, comment below what you guys think. What's some things that you hate about your Classic 350 if you have one? Any questions you have about the bike, be happy to answer them. If there's any videos that you want me to do in the future, I would love to know any video ideas coming up. If you want to watch my more in-depth review on the Classic 350, I'll post a link to that in the description. Go check it out. Enjoy the day and stay upright.